Greetings, and thank you for your interest in eco-villages and shared housing. My name is Jan Spencer, and I am your host for this panel. The goal of this cooperative presentation is to show and tell what life can be like in three very different eco-villages. What are the benefits, and how eco-villages are a core part of paradigm shift. Sharing space and sharing lives are two of the most important aspects of both eco-villages and paradigm shift. Sharing space and lives can help reduce eco-footprints, build community culture, and bring out the best in positive human potential. I want to share this image. Three examples of eco-villages and shared housing. Today we have Emily Kostuch from Walnut Street Co-op in Eugene, Deborah Jordan, Enright Ridge Eco Village in Cincinnati, and Lois Arkin, Los Angeles Eco Village in Los Angeles. These three eco-villages all value reducing ecological footprints and deepening positive relationships among their members and the wider world. These three all repurpose existing built infrastructure, such as a large single house, a spread out suburban neighborhood, and an urban setting heavy on concrete, commerce, and population density. First, what do we mean by the term eco-village? An eco-village is an intentional group of people who share lives and resources and can range in membership from five or six to hundreds. And infrastructure size can range from a single house to many houses and larger structures. Eco-village goals often include becoming more sustainable, cultivating social relations, cooperative economics, and more. Our world today is in great need for paradigm shift, the purposeful movement towards a society that takes care of its needs within the boundaries of the natural world, a society that places a high value on social uplift and building community culture, and that society would be served by an honest and responsible economic system. Paradigm shift is not a dreamy utopia in the distant future. Rather, we can enjoy many of the benefits of paradigm shift here and now in our daily lives in the real world. No permission required. Emily, Deborah, and Lois all will explain how their shared housing and eco villages are here and now in the real world, and members enjoy many of the benefits of paradigm shift every day. Eco villages and shared living are critical assets to the community. They all show what paradigm shift can look like, and their experience offers much of practical value to the wider world to encourage social, economic, and environmental transformation from personal scale to the neighborhood and to our entire society. So I just want to say a few things about my own location here in Eugene. I'm not an intentional community. I don't consider myself where I live an eco village, but it's sort of a proto eco village. My home is not an eco village, but it is a point of departure for a much more expansive social, economic, and lifestyle transformation here in my suburban neighborhood. I bought my place 25 years ago with the intention from the start for a deep permaculture makeover to reduce my eco footprint and to produce a useful amount of food, energy, water, and aesthetics on site. The plan from the outset was also to rent rooms in my modest two-bedroom house. 25 years ago, 25 years later, there's food production all over. There are veggie gardens front and back, 16 fruit trees, 4 nut trees, vines and brambles. I have a 6,500 gallon rainwater system. The garage is now a living space. I took out the driveway. I have passive solar. What used to be an outdoor patio is now a closed-in passive solar that helps heat my house, which is simply a wonderful place to enjoy, partly indoors, partly outdoors. I built a 400 square foot passive solar ADU to add residential density to my property. Literally, thousands of people have visited over the years to see what a suburban property can become. I rent 3 rooms. We do have a modest level of social collaboration, although this is not an intentional community, but we're all good housemates and we live well together. I have good relations with all my neighbors. 2 of my neighbors also are into permaculture. There are a dozen or so other properties similar to mine within a 10-minute bike ride. We've hosted many site tours in our neighborhood to show and tell what suburbia can become. There are something like 50 million suburban homes in the United States, and many could produce far more basics on site, provide far more affordable housing, reduce eco footprints for the residents, and help turn their surroundings into eco villages. This image shows my property here. This is a dream. I would love to see my surrounding neighborhood looking something like this. Okay, that's good. Next, I'll introduce each panel member here today, and we're going to start with Emily. Just a little bit about Emily. Emily has lived at Walnut Street Co-op here in Eugene for the past 8 years after living at River City Housing Collective in Iowa City, Iowa for a year, which sparked an interest in continued uh, intentional community living. She serves as a board member at Walnut Street Co-op and works in nonprofit administration and law with an educational background in psychology and gender studies. Her favorite things about community living are shared meals, environmental consciousness, and group problem solving. So, Emily, your turn.
Thank you. Let's see. Replace. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Very
Um,
good.
Great, thank you. I'm Emily and I live at Walnut Street Co-op, as Jen mentioned, in Eugene, Oregon. My presentation today will go over our co-op history, a little bit about what life is like here, and in the spirit of the conference, my experience on what the impact of the co-op is on the earth and its people, and our relationship with the wider community. So start with the history. Walnut Street Co-op is a home. It was formerly a duplex. The first half of it was built in 1908, and the second half was built in the 1940s. We have 9 bedrooms, excuse me, 4.5 bathrooms, 2 kitchens, 2 living rooms, 2 garages. We sit on about a third of an acre of land in our urban neighborhood setting in the small city of Eugene. We currently have 10 people living here, 9 in the bedrooms, and we have someone living in a camper in the driveway. At times, we've had up to 13 people total on the property. We're situated about 5 blocks away from the University of Oregon, which comes with both benefits and downsides. Um, Our neighbors are a mix of homeowners and college student rentals, and we're in one of the more affluent neighborhoods in the city. Um, the group of people who began the co-op started living in the house in the year 2000 and created their set of values and norms to establish the co-op life. The ownership of the house at the time was purchased by a single individual of that group. And in 2003, the owner decided to sell the house, and the rest of the residents worked together to fundraise to purchase the house. They established a revolving loan fund, which I recently learned was inspired by the LA Eco Village, which I think Lois might talk about a little bit more. Um, and I also learned that Lois was one of the advisors on establishing our co-op, so that's very cool. Um, so at the time, no banks would loan to the people who wanted to start the co-op, so they found about 20 individuals to provide various, amounts of loans at the time to fund the purchasing of the home. The revolving loan fund since um, has dwindled. It was maintained for at least a decade, and more recently, the majority of our funding has come from Shared Capital Cooperative, which is a co-op that funds other co-ops. We do have a few small individual loans from a handful of lenders, of course, and then our monthly rent is where all of our income and funding comes from. Um, so the co-op owns the house in Oregon. You can register with the state as a co-op, just like you could register a business. Like a business can own a property, the co-op can also own property. So the co-op owns the house, and those of us here pay rent, and so we're all sort of our own landlords. We don't have any other governing structure or people that preside over our funding or anything. So we're all responsible for maintaining the house, creating co-op culture, and making decisions together. We do have a board, and board members are people who live in the house and are committed to the long-term vision of the house. I'm on the board as well. Um, and I would say board members have the strongest sense of ownership in the house, and are often people who lived here for a longer term. The board's main tasks are overarching financial management and ensuring upkeep of the house, such as major maintenance projects. While we have a board, the overall hierarchical structure of the house is more of a flat line. Everyone has a say. I'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about what life is like at the co-op. Let's see. One of our housemates is a hobbyist photographer and took these really beautiful photos of some of the spaces inside the house. One of our goals is to provide affordable housing. Currently, our rental rates are about 50 to 60% of current market rates. Um, we've been having conversations recently about the sustainability of that and of what our financial goals are and how inflation has been so extreme lately. We will likely be raising rents in the coming years. It's not something that we want to do or typically do, but at different periods of time, it's something that we're kind of forced into doing. Things are ever evolving here. Our website states that Walnut Street Co-op is a social change-oriented eco-cooperative household. To me, social change means a couple of different things. One is being a model for alternative living styles, and another, I would say, is the values of the individuals in the house. Many of us do community-based work and lots of activist type work, really involved in our community. Um, I think those are both like pretty big pillars of life here. And then the eco-cooperative part, I'll share a bit more about that later. Life at Walnut Street. We cook and share meals together about 4 to 5 times a week. This is one of our main social activities as a house. Um, We're expected to participate in cooking or cleaning up of meals at least once a week. And I would say most dinners are not like 100% attended, but we usually have some group of people attending, so we are able to socialize and um, yeah, that's kind of where we spend most of our time together. We all contribute $180 per month to a shared food budget. We have house shoppers who purchase vegetarian foods for everyone, and people can and do live on this amount of food, though many of us buy our own extra snacks and meals outside of the shared food budget. I the food is one of my favorite parts of the house. It's and what we purchase is pretty substantial. Um, we I mentioned vegetarian, but when we have people who are vegan or gluten-free, we're able to accommodate for their needs as well. We have weekly house meetings. We are a full consensus household, so when we need to make decisions together, everyone must come to an agreement on the decision. As you can imagine, this can take a long time. And for some people, that's really frustrating. And but it ensures that everyone who has an opinion or feeling on something is heard. We come to a lot of in between decisions, something compromises, I guess is the word, um, so that, people can feel their needs are met and they're being heard. All of our meetings start with a personal check-in, so we can know how each of us is showing up to the meeting. Some recent examples of meeting topics are timing of the robot vacuum. This is related to a housemate who was having sound sensitivities to the vacuum running at night. So we switched the timing of it to earlier in the day. Thermostat settings. Um, we have our shared food. We have a long list of all things that are approved for food shoppers to buy. So whenever we have a new housemate, we go through the whole list every time and make sure all of our needs are being met there. Narrowing down kitchen tools. Somehow we always have like so many knives that are dull, and you know, people are sick of the dull knives, and we either get them sharpened or we buy new ones or get rid of some old ones. Mulching was a recent topic that was unexpectedly contentious. Um, in the fall, so our neighborhood used to be an orchard, so we have apple and pear trees in the backyard. Um, Something that we talk about every year is what to do with the abundance of bruised apples we have in our backyard. Um, okay, next slide. And once a month, we gather together for a housework party. We work on house projects such as deep cleaning or working on neglected areas of the house. Many of our work parties focus on maintaining our garden, which is definitely a point of pride for folks here in our neighborhood. Um, I'll talk more about that in our sustainability section, but you can see some beautiful photos of our garden. Um,
Emily, we're
yes.
not we're not seeing your pictures.
Oh, really?
No, I can see him.
You see pictures?
Yes.
Okay, I don't. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Another aspect of the house is conflict resolution. Some people compare living in a co-op to living with your family, and as we all know, that comes with great things and also difficult things. A requirement of living here is to make yourself available for conflict resolution should a conflict arise. Our leases even have a statement about this, um, so that theoretically, if someone is resistant to conflict resolution, there could be consequences to that. Fortunately, that has not been something that's happened in my time living at the co-op. We um, about 3 years ago or so, we established what we call our accountability and conflict team. I'm a member of this team, and we support people who are dealing with conflict. We sort of offer like a menu of options on how someone might want to move forward with a conflict, whether it's just like, expressing their feelings and, letting it go, or they want to have a mediated conversation with the person, or they want to do, some other thing. We're able to help guide those people in what they want to do. We're not necessarily providing mediation services, though some people do have skills in that and are able to share those. We're more offering resources and support. We have a small network of other local co-ops and intentional communities where we are able to reach out to each other if we want like a neutral third party to hear about a conflict or support with a mediation. That's been a really valuable support that we've established like in the last couple of years. It was kind of after a big conflict scene that happened at the co-op. We wanted to kind of strengthen our networks recently. Yeah, we wanted to strengthen our networks locally. So we've been working with those folks, and we have also hired mediators in the past. Our impact on the earth and its people. I have a bunch of bullet points on how we are eco-conscious. I think just the nature of our shared space, which comes with like shared appliance, storage space, etc. Think about like how if all 10 of us had our own homes or our own apartments, we would each have our own toaster, we would each have our own maybe lawnmower or, set of tools, but we're all, we only need one of each of those things living in a house together, which lowers our impact on the earth. Our garden, which I mentioned earlier, is more of a hobby. It doesn't sustain our food culture here, but it's a fun and rewarding project anyway. This gives us the opportunity to participate in our local food economy. We have a CSA subscription about 6 months out of the year, and we shop frequently at the local farmers market and buy locally and organically as much as possible. We buy food in bulk from a local wholesaler. This lowers our waste compared to people who mostly purchase in smaller packaged portions. On garbage days, I've noticed that our trash bin often isn't totally full, while our neighbors who are single families or college renters will have overflowing trash bins. When we need to buy new things for the house, like furniture or appliances, we buy used whenever possible or shop for new things at local stores whenever possible. We try to also get things repaired rather than replace whenever we can. I think that we have lots of great resources for that here in Eugene. We're able to have our values reflected in how we interact with capitalism. Recently, I brought an idea to the house. We learned that big corporations such as like Amazon, Walmart, the Home Depot, they're helping fund ICE. So I suggested that we don't, make an effort to not purchase things for the house from those places. And people agreed with that. So we're able to, reflect those values. And I think that's really great. And for me, a major benefit of living in community is the ease of interacting with people. I'm a pretty introverted person with socially anxious tendencies, so just putting myself in a situation where I have built-in social support with caring and thoughtful people is a huge help to my mental health. I also think of a few years ago when the loneliness epidemic became a health crisis. I really think that living in and embracing community can help with those concerns and issues that many of us experience. Lastly, I'll quickly go over our relationships with the wider community. These are some photos of some recent potlucks we've had. We have monthly community dinners where we maintain connections with neighbors, friends, coworkers, past housemates, and other local intentional community folks. These have been a great networking and socializing events for us. And then lastly, we send out quarterly newsletters to our funders, supporters, family members, friends, and past housemates. So yeah, that's what I got. And there's some info on us.
Okay. That's great, Emily. Thanks. Our next panel member is Deborah Jordan at Enright Ridge Eco Village in Cincinnati, Ohio. Deborah and her family have lived at Enright Ridge in the Boldface Creek watershed of Cincinnati, Ohio, since before there was an organization. They were just a group of friends interested in eco-community. She's been a part of the many ups and downs in the neighborhood, which she is happy to note the neighborhood is in a resurgence. We want to hear about that. Deborah is a Quaker, a mediator, and a producer of an annual local food guide. Deborah, please share your thoughts.
Well, yes, and I will share my screen too. I'm so glad to be here. And thank you so much for organizing this. Let me get to screen slideshow beginning. Okay. Can you see that?
I can.
Okay. So this is the headwaters of our street, the beginning of our street. This is like 15 years ago. And to say a little about our street, it's a dead-end street, half-mile long, about 80 households. It's a working class, middle class neighborhood with a lot of the housing stock, early 1900s to mid 1900s. And I'm considering us an urban, not suburban eco village. We're 10 minutes from downtown Cincinnati by car or bus, maybe 15. And this, in terms of involvement in this, people move here because they're interested. Like I said, a group of friends started moving here. The housing was affordable. We knew Jim and Eileen Shank. They started inviting people to move here. So I would say, Jim always says, and I'll just quote him, a third of the neighborhood's involved, a third is supportive, and a third doesn't care unless we do something that they like. So it's a different kind of eco village where there is no membership and anyone can move in and anyone can move out. So when you see this picture here from maybe 15 years ago, I would say half of these people have moved, half of them got divorced. I mean, this is what modern life is like, right? So that creates its challenges and opportunities both. I moved here because of Jim and Eileen Shank. I'd lived in a communal household for 3 years, which I really liked. And then I lived in a rural community for a year, but I was looking to move back into the city because of too much driving. So I lived with Jim and Eileen, probably Shank, for a year. And then I ended up renting a house with other people in the neighborhood. So that's how I ended up getting here. So these group of friends, we all centered originally around an organization called Imago, an environmental education center on 37 acres of land. And this was a great place to contribute our energy and also to support sustainability through this group. And it's really focused more recently on youth education, which is great, especially in our neighborhood. Like, we live in a very diverse neighborhood, so we have a large population from Central America and Mexico, and some of those children are living in apartments. So this is their chance to get outside and find out if there are bears in the woods. They often wonder if there are bears in the woods. So I ended up here and, like I said, focused around Imago. And then in 2004, a group of people who were living here because they were interested in ecology and community got together to say, what more can we do to develop this neighborhood? So out of that group, we went up and down the street to create a poll with people what they wanted to see in the neighborhood. One was a trail around the street. I didn't mention we have 200 acres of woods around the street, plus a cemetery on one side. So we have lots of, green and dead space, you could call it, with all the dead people buried, but a lot of green space. And so this group of people, 17 people, ended up incorporating, and in 2007, we had the Enright Ridge Eco Village, and that vision is so helpful. That's what gets other people to move here, whether they know people or not. And then these people are like-minded, so they support some of the activities we've done, like a community-supported agriculture project. We've growing food in the neighborhood, rain barrels, rain gardens. We did those together, solar panels. So we all support each other in trying to do this. Unlike Emily, we, often have our individual houses, although there are some people who are living in the same house who are not related, a few. But we do have a tool share through Imago and through our listserv. We just put on our listserv, hey, does anyone have this? And then that's how we can share a little more with not everyone having their own everything. A little more about Imago. So I think part of living in community is what can you do while you're here? Well, you interact with other people, but we also have events through Imago, Art in the Woods, and that's a really cool thing. It inspired me to think about doing more in our backyard with Art in the Woods. A lot of our houses have long, narrow backyards. They're called shotgun houses. And so we have 9/10 of an acre and we do a lot of gardening, and a lot of people do, but I also think art is so important for inspiring us. This is something else that we can do together in the neighborhood called Music in the Woods. And this is a big annual fundraiser for Imago that happens every fall. So a lot of us have volunteered there and get involved. And it's a great opportunity to come together with others. Many people come from outside of our community. Terry Street Commons. So this is also interesting. I didn't mention that there are people who live on contiguous streets who are involved with the eco neighborhood, I would say. And Terry Street Commons is the property, quote unquote, is owned by Imago. We have to start talking about property ownership, right? Is that a good notion or not? But I love it. It's a commons now. So there's a community garden that a lot of people get involved with. They have shared chickens, a chicken co-op, and that's on this Terry Street Gardens. And there's something called Terra Divina that happens every other Saturday, which is a great spiritual nourishment where somebody organizes this and different people are helping out now. And whatever the weather, you dress for the weather, winter, spring, summer, fall, you come outside, you read a poem together, you go off in the woods for half an hour and you come back and share. So that's very nourishing for the community who comes together. And I love to try to come. This is our house. Well, you can't see our house. This is a sign outside of our meadow. And we put this up because we got cited for high weeds. This is another example of what community can do. So I got involved in changing the Cincinnati weed ordinance. It took me 4 years to change a small ordinance, but now natural landscaping is allowed. So we were cited and we had a $200 fine, and we had to gather all the testimonies and what we were growing and why it was important. And so we have this sign up that talks about why meadows are important. So I think a lot of people on our street have alternative yards, which is wonderful. This is like an example of one of the houses that has, and actually she's a landscaper, so she has a nice yard, but this is a typical smaller house like we have. And she grows a lot of beautiful plants. And then this is an example of what can happen too. These people have a bigger house and they have a family here and they have a bigger backyard, and they have had at different times goats and pigs and sometimes sheep, and they get out and sometimes run down the street and everyone gets excited to say, hey, the animals are out. But she has her own flower business. And so she can actually, I think having, being able to sustain yourself out of your community is so important, and not a lot of us can do it. Actually, I do mediation. A lot of work I do is at home because I can do it on the phone or on video. So I can stay in the community that way. They also, the partner here is a farmer. We have a number of farmers on the street, so we're really blessed that way. So if you ever have a food growing question, there's somebody to ask. This is another example. That's the cemetery fence, and we put up without asking. You ask forgiveness, not permission, right? We put up a garden along here, and this actually doesn't show the latest iteration, but the permaculture group got some money to put plants in, so we put a lot of edible plants in last fall, and they're starting to bloom. I should take a recent picture. But we needed to put a sign up for the cemetery to not mow, because at one point they started to mow and we had to remind them. So now we have that sign up to remind them not to. And that's another thing. A person on our street works for the cemetery now. So she's our liaison if we ever have issues with the cemetery, which they're usually very friendly and neighborly. And this is our entrance into the cemetery. St. Joseph Cemetery is an old cemetery in Cincinnati. So now there used to be a house here and that belonged to the cemetery, and they took it down. But now this is our common entrance off of Enright. Now there are a lot of people who walk through here all hours because the cemetery knows us. We try to watch out for them, and they allow us. You know, typically the cemetery is closed at 5 o'clock, but a lot of us walk down the hill, and it's a great walk around. Okay, here's my exciting news. So everything's in evolution. So we had a split in the neighborhood about 2020. So, you know, we started in 2004, 2007. We were really organized. We had a board. We were able to borrow money from someone to rehab houses and resell them with more energy efficiency. We bought this building, the greenhouse. We bought a pub on the corner, and we bought an apartment complex. All of this was a lot of work, of course, but it was also exciting. But then there was a split in the neighborhood. And one group really took over the assets, and that's a whole long story. But including this greenhouse, but the Cincinnati Permaculture Institute started renting greenhouse growing space there to sell their products. So we were always glad they were there. And the other group really didn't want the properties, but they didn't want us to have them. It's even though I'm in conflict resolution, you got to be willing, you know, you can't, you got to be willing to try to solve it. So anyway, they ended up wanting to get rid of these buildings, and they did sell the apartment building, but Cincinnati Permaculture Institute in the last month just bought the greenhouse, an area they can grow a lot of permy kind of plants, and also the pub, which is now the hub. So that's the pub. The other group sold the liquor license. That's on the corner of Enright and West 8th. The other group sold the liquor license. So now it's a hub, which actually a lot of us are more excited about. A lot of us didn't, you know, love gathering at the former pub, but all of us weren't that big of drinkers. So this is nice because a lot of people are talking about doing a tea bar and having events here and yoga. So that is exciting. And actually we're having a meeting Sunday, another meeting to talk about what people in the neighborhood want to see. Another thing for me that's been great is some of us have gathered as Earth Elders to talk about how do we mentor, how do we share our wisdom, how do we learn from younger people. And so we've had interns in the neighborhood. And here are two of our interns and some of the Earth Elders group have gathered for a final goodbye to the interns. Usually it's spring, summer kind of work, because there's a lot of work in the neighborhood to do or at our own personal residence. And I think the whole idea of community is we are stronger together. So in terms of this paradigm shift, I really appreciate that. I'm part of a Rights of Nature group, and we all say it's about a paradigm shift. We have to stop viewing the earth as our kind of resource extraction place. We have to see we're part of nature. I think some people have always been more connected to the ecological part and some people to the community part, but I think they have to be brought together. So in our neighborhood, it's moving from individualism to community. I see some of that shift. Excuse me. I see the shift of the extractive kind of commercial sharing to more regenerative lifestyles. My husband did articles on people in the neighborhood who are living more regenerative lifestyles. A lot of us have off the grid kind of attempts at living. Ego to eco-centered, that was another thing we talked about. How do we recognize all our relations, not just our human ones? And I think we talk about stories of encounters in the neighborhood with fox or with deer or we saw a pileated woodpecker in our backyard. We were so excited. And then also 12 wild turkeys came and visited me one day when I was sleeping out in the hammock. My backyard is like, and I especially learned this during COVID, is like a sanctuary because of the woods adjacent around our street. And when I was sleeping, these turkeys came coming up and they were murmuring. It was very exciting. I think there are other ways. I think we teach each other, so we have a lot of expertise, skills in the neighborhood. We have a death doula, so we've had conversations about death. We have an engineer, so we have someone to help us with our water tank when we were having issues. We have farmers, as I mentioned. So we all learn from each other. And we have a resilience group now that meets monthly to talk about, what's happening with the collapse of society and how do we become more personally resilient. So I think that's been supportive. Not that it's not a little bit scary, but I think we do trust that we can try to help each other out in those kind of situations. And social justice advocates, a lot of those, there were a couple people who were snatched by ICE up at there's a Kroger's up the other end of the street. And a lot of our neighborhood went up there for a protest. And there's somebody in the neighborhood who works with the immigrant community. So we have a lot of people who are doing wonderful things, and we try to tune in, and we have a newsletter once a month. We have a listserv, we have a signal chat. So we've got a lot of communication, and we've got a lot of excitement with the permaculture group coming in. So there are many ways to build an eco village or community, and just getting some people together in the same neighborhood is a great start. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thanks a lot, Deborah. So next, we're going to hear from Lois Arkin, but I want to show just a few images of LA Eco Village. I have permission from Lois to do this. So let me do a screen share here. And I will do this. And then I will do this. Share. So this is an image from LA Eco Village website. You can see their website, LA Eco Village, and there should be contact information for everyone here if you want to follow up with the panel members. But this is outside of LA Eco Village, which I actually visited about a year ago, which was great. LA Eco Village is very urban. This is not so far from downtown Los Angeles. You can see parking, streets, commercial area. This is actually the Eco Village. Lois is going to mention this exciting project right here for a reuse of this street. There was a auto repair shop here that's being repurposed. This is an important part of all of our stories, is reusing, reimagining, repurposing existing built infrastructure. A picture of what LA Eco Village looks like across the street. And these are just several pictures. Interestingly, there's some very nice green area at LA Eco Village, and one of the Eco Village members. And bikes and alternatives to cars are a big part of LA Eco Village. And this is coming in the front door right here. So I will stop the share. I will intro Lois.
Hi, thank you.
Lois,
Thank you. Oh,
Lois, I'll introduce you.
oh, okay.
There we go. Lois lives and works in Los Angeles Eco Village, which she co-founded in 1993. She's executive director of CRSP, Los Angeles Eco Village Institute. That's a nonprofit she founded in 1980, which is the ongoing developer and manager of LA Eco Village. Lois is a co-author and editor of 2 books and numerous articles on housing, co-ops, and urban sustainability. She gives regular public tours and talks on LA Eco Village and is a passionate advocate for reducing automobile dependency. Okay, Lois.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that, for Jen, that wonderful introduction and for showing a few photos. So for me, it all started as a little girl in suburban Detroit, where I lived within a few minutes walk of my grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends. Um, it was the 40s and the 50s. We had a victory garden. As I said, we had unpaved streets and forests and fields across the street from our home, which my father built. And mother was not always pleased when I brought a garter snake home for Mother's Day. But there was, we walked to school at 5 and 6 years old. We walked 6 blocks to school by ourselves. So this is kind of all the kinds of things that are unheard of today. So skipping 20 years after all of that, I'm now in California. I went around the world on a cargo freighter for 6 months. I studied anthropology. I worked in the music business for a while. I worked in the aerospace industry, and so forth. And finally, I had a mentor in a small music organization that was passionate about co-ops. And that's, again, my second start in life with co-op. So after I left that organization, I started a co-op resource center. I'm happy to say that today there is no need for it whatsoever now for me to have that resource center, because there are so many co-op resource centers in LA, I'm pleased to say, and maybe I had something to do with it. I'm not sure sometimes. But those dropout years were very important to me in my 30s, a 5-year dropout to do whatever I want, whenever I wanted to. That was rather amazing. So now we are in the mid-1980s, and we've been working on an 11-acre site to create an eco village. After I learned about all these kind of scattered co-ops all over the city, well, why don't we have a co-op neighborhood? And so even before we had the word eco village, or even sustainability for that matter, mid-80s, we were talking about doing transforming this 11-acre landfill into what would soon be called an eco village. So that was really great, because we learned a lot about what we could do and what we couldn't do. And of course, I was kind of a person that just went right ahead and did whatever I envisioned doing. And maybe learn a little bit about the law and the zoning code and all the other reasons that we couldn't do what we were doing after we had done it. So then all of a sudden, so that was the mid to early 90s. And then all of a sudden, it was 1992 in Los Angeles, and our city went up in flames as a result of the Rodney King beating. And I lived in that neighborhood, in this neighborhood, which was to become the LA Eco Village neighborhood. At that time, I lived here for 13 years, always planning to move to that 11-acre site that was going to be an eco village someday. But we had 5 major fires within a few minutes walk of where I was living. And so our planning committee, these uprisings where there were fires all over the city and back to back with with what was to become the LA Eco Village. I just moved forward. Those uprisings were on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. People in LA were either leaving the city or planning to leave the city or coming into the city to sweep up and clean up from the 3 days of uprisings, rioting, fires. And I just sat at my computer reducing our 50-page feasibility study for the 11-acre site 7 miles away from where I was, reducing that to a couple pages of bullet points that, well, how about we do it as how about a retrofit? Not necessarily in my neighborhood. I was just reducing this 50-page feasibility study to a couple pages of bullet points about how an eco village might be done in a more as a retrofit of an existing built-out neighborhood. And on Monday, I brought my planning committee together, and for the next 6 months, we met regularly with the question in mind of how we might do this as a retrofit in an existing urban neighborhood. And I was so in love with consensus and non-hierarchical ways of being that it never, there, as much as I really wanted it to be in the neighborhood I lived in, I wouldn't say it because I didn't want to appear to, to be being hierarchical, so to speak. So come December 1st, the committee said, well, why don't we just do it in Lois's neighborhood? And so, relief, relief, relief. And then January 1st, 1993, LA Eco Village was born. We owned nothing. I didn't know when we would or if, whenever. And it was just that volunteers came in 2 and 3 times a week. We walked up and down the blocks, meeting our neighbors. Even though I'd lived in the neighborhood 13 years, beyond shaking my head hello to a few neighbors who I saw regularly, I didn't really know people in my neighborhood. Now, for the first time, I was committed to really knowing the people in my neighborhood. So that happened, and I did, and especially the kids. We had all kinds of things going on with kids. We had a recycling co-op. We planted trees together. Our families went on weekend camping trips together. This all happened in the space of 6 months of starting LA Eco Village. It was truly, truly amazing. Certainly by the end of that year, I knew all 151 households in my 2-block neighborhood and all the children that lived in the neighborhood and many of their parents as well. So that was really quite amazing. So those were the early years of LA Eco Village, when we didn't own anything. All of a sudden, 3 years later, we learned that the 40-unit building on the intersection was for sale. Oh, well, we'll buy it. So we did. A year later, we had, in the mid-'80s, as a co-op resource center, we had started encouraged people to start co-ops all over the city, and some people did. One of the things that we did, because we wanted to demonstrate an alternative to the conventional money system is we started what we called the Ecological Revolving Loan Fund, which Emily mentioned also that they had started. And I learned later that, oh, wow, they thought we helped them do something. Yay. So we started the Ecological Revolving Loan Fund in the 1980s as a demonstration of how we might do a different kind of money organization. So people would loan us money, and that this was long before we had any fantasy of a word, any plans to make an eco village or an intentional community. But so we started this thing called the Ecological Revolving Loan Fund, or ELF. And we borrowed money from our constituents because we were putting out a hard copy newsletter every 3 months to about 5,000 people by then. And so we reached out to our constituency to make loans to us, and then we would make those loans to small green businesses. Well, that ELF project was still in place in the mid-90s, when we learned that this 40-unit building was for sale. Well, we'll just grow the ELF and buy it. And so we did. A year later, for $500,000, it had a $1.2 million note on it. It was half vacant and in near slum-like conditions. So that ended my honeymoon with the neighborhood, because now I was a developer of this thing. Now what are we going to do? So that's what so then we had half the building was vacant. Oh, and we have all these constituents. Maybe some of them will move in. And so little by little, people did move in. We didn't really have a good membership process, and we had a lot of problems a few years into that. So let me see if I can hurry up with all the rest of it. So 3 years later, we bought the 8-unit building adjacent to the 40-unit building. And then a decade later, we bought the 4-plex on the corner across the street. And also by long ago, before that time, the 4-plex I was living in was demolished by the LA School District, and it became a learning garden for the land trust that we helped found, which sparked a land trust movement in Los Angeles. And let me see, I know my time is running out, so let me see if I can run it up. Meantime, we founded the Limited Equity Housing Co-op that owned 2 of our buildings. The Beverly, Vermont Community Land Trust, which owned the land underneath our buildings, then managed the 1/4-acre learning garden across the street, and the 4-plex on the intersection. So 3 501c3 nonprofit organizations became the co-developers, not just my organization, of the Los Angeles Eco Village. And they still are. And that's the story. Now, so now there are 52, there were originally 52 units of permanently affordable housing in 3 buildings around the intersection. Are the 1/4-acre learning garden, the 1/4-acre community hub that was a former auto shop on the corner, which is now a lot of things and going to be a lot more things. And what's next? That's what I want to, there's so much information about us, as there is about all of us, on the internet, and about 50 videos on YouTube about LA Eco Village, if you can cull through all the other Eco Village stuff, which I'm sure some of you will want to do. But what's next for LA Eco Village is the Bimini Plaza, closing our main north-south street down for about 300 linear feet and making it into a plaza. It's been approved by the city and funded by the city. The Diversity Park, about a 2,500 square foot park at our community hub on the property of the former auto shop. And that diversity park adds to the most park poor neighborhood in all of Los Angeles and the densest neighborhood in all of Los Angeles. And so we're doing our part on that part. We'll also have an eco co-op hostel on that property, 6 tiny houses that can accommodate groups coming in, people coming in groups to have an urban sustainable living experience, either on for a weekend or a 2-week permaculture
Cool.
course, whatever. And then we also are going to have an urban farm on our dead-end street, taking over an auto lane and the sidewalk. And lastly, next year, amongst all those things, the plaza, the diversity park, the eco co-op hostel, the urban farm will be my 90th birthday. So we'll be celebrating that. And I hope you'll all come because maybe we'll have space for at least some of you. And we're very urban, so there's lots of hotels all around. And that kind of sums it up for me. I think I'm within my time frame. Is that right? Do I have any time left or I'm done?
That's fine. That's fine, Lois. Yeah.
Okay.
So those are wonderful stories from Emily, Deborah, and Lois, and I chipped in a little bit too. And I want to remind people that you can track down Emily, Deborah, Lois, and myself by way of websites and information that you've seen here on the presentation. If you have more questions you want to answer or you want to ask and find answers. So these are awesome histories. Every place is so different. Every place is a retrofit of something that had a more affirmative purpose in the long run. These are all allies. These are all assets. Emily, Deborah, and Lois are pioneers of paradigm shift. We've got just a little bit more time. Deborah, would you like to share a couple of final thoughts?
You're muted. Oh, there you
Yeah.
go.
Oops, there I am. Yeah, thanks for asking. I really appreciate doing this presentation with Emily and Lois and Eugene because it reminds me that there are many ways to develop community. And I also appreciate my community. Sometimes, in the midst of certain struggles, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is hard. But when I look at the overall history and I look at what we've done and and I met my husband here, so what do you know? So I wouldn't be married with this particular guy otherwise. So there are many fruitful things that have come out of living here, and I appreciate being able to reflect on it.
Sure. Thanks, Deborah. Emily, can you unmute yourself and share a couple final thoughts with us?
Sure, yeah. Both of those, Deborah and Lois's presentations were really inspiring, and they really highlighted what I was thinking about when I saw your paradigm shift model, particularly the line about being the change and not asking for permission. When I describe my housing situation to people who aren't familiar, or people who are like, semi-familiar but like don't really know the details, a lot of people are interested and they're like, oh, I wish I could start something like this, or like, it would be cool to live in a community, but I don't know how to do it. I think that like there are a lot of people with interests and passion about it. I think that those people just like need to figure out a way to find each other maybe, because it's totally possible. And there's lots of ways to create communities like that as reflected in this panel. So yeah, I really appreciate hearing the diversity of our each of our living situations and how they came to be.
Sure. Thanks, Emily. Lois.
Well, for Emily, I want to just, and whoever else is listening in, I just want to say we have a 2-page, just 10-point description of how to start an eco village in your neighborhood. So I'm happy to forward that to anyone that is interested. It's very, very simple, but tedious, and don't think it's going to happen overnight. Um, I just wanted to say that I've I didn't know this in the beginning, but a few years into it, what I learned was that there is a formula for success in creating and doing anything in life. So there's a 4-point formula, and I'm just going to get it in as my last minute ditch that number one, to have a clear vision of what you want to do. Number two, to have a good plan with flexibility built into your plan. Number three, stay grounded. If you're not grounded yourself, you're just visionary and not grounded, make sure you've got people that have both vision and groundedness. And number four, persevere. If after 50 years nothing has happened, maybe it's time to change your vision.
That's a
So
little too
that's
low.
and I really, really appreciated hearing from Emily and Deborah. And it's so good to be in community today with all of you. And thank you, Jan, for all of the organizing you've done to bring us together and be able to share what we've learned and are learning from each other.
Yeah.
Jan, I would be remiss if I did not bring up Jim Shank wrote a book recently in the last couple of years, Creating an Urban Eco Village, a model for revitalizing our cities. So that's another way to delve into all the ups and downs and the organic progression of our eco village. And I
Sure.
appreciate Lois's 4 points. I immediately wrote them down. And I think for me, having some faith and having some spiritual grounding has been critical in all this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has just all been very wonderful. I appreciate all three of you. I appreciate your village, your eco village members who are also part of the story, but aren't here with us at this moment on this Zoom presentation. But I consider all of us to be pioneers of paradigm shift, moving towards a society that lives within the boundaries of the natural world, that values bringing out the best and positive human potential, building civic culture, and of course, moving towards a situation of having an economic system that's honest and responsible. That's a big wish list, but we're all working in that direction. So, with that in mind, this is Jan Spencer here in Eugene, Oregon, and thanks for your attention. Go forth and create an eco village and be well. Thank you.